based, Matthew? In
Right
which
now,
country?
I'm in United States, in Seattle area, visiting the Clear Mountain Monastery community.
Yes. I don't know anything about that particular community. Is it like a retreat center or study center or what?
No, it's a Theravada monastery affiliated with 2 monks, but they have a strong lay community, but don't yet have any property.
Right. And are the monks ordained in Thailand or some other country?
One ordained in Thailand and one ordained in United States.
Yes,
I believe. What is the reason you're asking that?
No particular reason. I'm just wondering about your own background, and you're familiar with Pali terminology, or how long have you been studying Dhamma? Just to get a feel for the whether you say Pali terms or not.
I have familiarity with some Pali, yes.
Okay, good. Good.
And who introduced you to the group here?
I was Kalyana Mita of mine, Carmen.
Okay, good.
Told me about this study group.
Right. Yes, we spent time with, Jonathan and I spent time with Carmen in Bangkok not so long ago.
Anyway, feel free to join in, ask questions, make comments, or just listen as you prefer. Nice to see you.
You have a question?
No, I was going to say it in chat.
Let's see if Ajahn is here now. Ajahn, are you there?
I'm here now.
สวัสดีครับอาจารย์ครับ สวัสดีครับ
สวัสดีค่ะท่านอาจารย์
สวัสดีครับอาจารย์
Please start.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to start with? I know last week we finished sort of partway through a discussion that arose from a question Alberto had about thinking and nimitta. Alberto, did you have anything you wanted to pick up on there again?
Hi, everybody. No, I think we talk about it. Maybe we can talk about another subject. I was thinking about.
Alberto, please speak up. We can hardly hear you.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. I don't have anything more to say on the metaphor for now. I don't know if anybody else want to add something on any subject. Would be nice.
I actually.
I have a question. If no one else has.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Sawadika, Tanajan. It's a question about, no, we're often reminded that it's just the present moment that can be known by Panya. However, technically speaking, if there's the visible object arises, Panya doesn't arise in that particular jhana process, does it? Or is it in the following mind door? Because Panya has to know the presently arising object. So was thinking about it yesterday, and I thought, well, Panya can't know it immediately. So when does that Panya know that visible object or any object?
Just for Matthew's benefit, I think it's helpful if everyone just translates Pali terms in the beginning, just to make sure no one is lost. So Panya is understanding.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so used to using them that I was going to say, what Pali term did I use? Okay, got it, Sarah. So wisdom, yes.
Just in the beginning, just to make sure everyone can follow.
No worries. Yeah. That's my question.
Just repeat the question, Azita.
Well, we hear that it's just the present moment that can be known by Panya. And technically speaking, the present object might be sound or visible object or any of those sense store items, objects. But Panya, wisdom, the right understanding does not arise in that very jhana process, or does it? So how does that Panya know that presently arising? How does wisdom know, or right understanding know, that presently arising object?
When we were talking about nimitta last time, we were talking, which is the sign of the reality. We were talking about how it's like the connecting of many, many dots. The reality that appears, such as the visible object or the seeing, is not one visible object or one seeing, but many, many visible objects that have rapidly arisen and fallen away. And what actually appears, what actually is known, is the sign, the nimitta of the reality. It's actually the characteristic of the reality. So the reality itself has fallen away. The visible object has fallen away. Many visible objects have fallen away, but the characteristic appears in the mind, or by way of the sign of the characteristic. So when we say it is the present reality which is known, it's actually the sign of the characteristic of the reality which is known by the right understanding, panya. So even when there is understanding, it is known through the mind door. Now, in theory or in detail, we can read that understanding, just like wrong understanding, can arise in a sense door process. But when we're talking about the development of understanding, it is always the understanding of the sign of reality, not just one reality that is the object, but the sign of many, many occurrences of the reality which have arisen and fallen away. But the succession of the arising and falling away of realities is so vast for all intents and purposes. It is the understanding of the sign of the present reality.
Right, yes. I've heard this a lot, about the nimitta. First of all, that we're reminded often it's the present reality that arises and has got, or should be known by right understanding. But when it's broken, like you said, it's nimitta. It just seems to get more difficult, this Dhamma, as the more I sort of intellectually understand it. It's very, very subtle and deep, isn't it? Yes. Okay. So
Just
go on.
I think the reason that we talk about nimitta is to show that actually we live all the time in the world of nimitta, whatever appears, whether it is by ignorance or by understanding, it is the nimitta which appears. And when it is the reality that appears by way of nimitta, it doesn't make any difference because it's still the characteristic of reality, the replica of the reality itself, which appears at the moment of understanding of visible object that appears. It doesn't matter whether it's in the eye door or the mind door, because it is the characteristic of visible object that appears to understanding. There's no thought of at that time of which doorway or whether it's nimitta or not, because it is the reality itself, the characteristic of reality which appears. But if it wasn't by way of nimitta, how could seeing ever appear? How could aversion, which only arises with akusala, unwholesome consciousness, ever appear? So it is the way of explaining, the way of understanding that any reality can appear, because it is by way of its nimitta, by way of the sign or the image.
Right.
For example, metta, how could there be understanding of metta if it wasn't by way of nimitta? Because at the moment when metta arises, even if it is with understanding, the object is a concept, other beings. So the characteristic of metta, for example, can only be known by way of nimitta, and it's the same for every reality. But I think it's a good topic for Ajahn to talk more about, or anyone else.
Okay, that sounds great.
So now, in order to understand what we talk about, Dhamma or reality, we have to understand in truth by one's own thought about what is there now, appearing. Not just that which does not appear. That which is now appearing, can it be known little by little as it is?
Yes, Ajahn. Yes.
So what appears now? Because there is moments of appearing of different realities, but now, just now, one moment at a time, what is now appearing? As we have heard, nimitta only appears, no understanding of the truth of what makes nimitta to appear, because no understanding of the characteristic of that at all. Just it appears because everyone, every body can understand what is now appearing. But what's the truth of that which appears? Can it be like it appears, people and things all around? Impossible. And how can there be the understanding of that which appears now without the words of truth from the enlightened one, the Buddha? How can there be such thinking about the truth of whatever is there in life? That's why at this moment, right understanding only can begin to develop to understand the truth of what we have learned in books, like arising and falling away, so through different doorways, one doorway at a time, and so on. But now what appears, it has to conform with what in the book tells us about it. So now what appears in truth, when we generally or usually say something appear, fork or knife or table or people, but what is the truth? It's very difficult to have such considering about the truth, because in truth, no word at all. It's only that we have to use the word to explain what is there. only that which can be seen. See, the truth is that there are so many things in life around, but what can be seen is only that which can be seen. And how come, see, we just live without understanding of any moment? Without the eye, can there be seeing? And seeing is not the eye at all. So beginning to learn to understand the truth of this very moment, what is taken for something seen, like a handkerchief, see? But in truth, what is seen cannot be anything at all. It's only a reality which can be seen. Even the term reality is not clear enough in the beginning, because in life it seems like everything we see, we hear, and we think about are so true. But in truth, just only one moment at a time in life. There cannot be many moments in a moment at all. But in truth, one moment we're talking about is only the split seconds of a moment. That's why the truth is hidden, because of the rapidity of that which rolls along so very quickly. Nothing can be known at all until there can be a moment of beginning to understand that life exists only in a moment. And what is there is hidden, because it's so short and brief, very short, just appear and disappear all the time, unknown. That's why what appears is the succession. For example, that which is seen, many dots. So what appears, it seems like in a moment right now, is some shape and form to be known as something. No idea about shape and form. It's something instantly, but we have to come up to consider each moment to understand what really appears in life, no matter in what world. It has to be so true that no one can change it or make it arise in such and such different ways at all. So now, beginning to understand the truth, no understanding of seeing, no understanding of that which is seen, because without conditions, they cannot be seen or anything at all. So what is the world is that which is conditioned to arise. And as soon as it has risen, it falls away instantly. So how can the truth be known without considering carefully to have firm confidence of the truth, whether what we are talking about is true or not? For example, seeing arises in a moment. There cannot be any other thing besides that which is seen and seeing appearing. But in truth, it's much deeper than that, because the enlightenment told us about the different moments which do not appear at all. The citta, the reality, the consciousness arises before seeing is not known, does not appear. And the citta, now I think that everyone knows what citta is, the consciousness that arises through experience, whatever is there now in life, each moment, one by one. So now, that is a reality. Who knows? No one. It's only that which arises. It has its characteristic. Its nature is just to experience what is there, no matter through eyes, ears, thought, tongue, body, and mind. There must be the reality which experiences all the time, arising and falling away, never to return, never to come back, never to arise again. In samsara, is this true or not true? This is the way to learn to understand the truth of what is there in life. That's all. Each moment can be learned, not just only seeing, the hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, liking. They are real when they are there by conditions. No more, only when they are there, one by one. For example, seeing right now. many moments of seeing. Is that true? Because what is seen is so many different things. It seems like in a moment, everything is there. But in truth, breaking it down or up, it doesn't matter at all. There must be different moments from moment to moment. The chitta before seeing does not see. The chitta after seeing does not see. See, and this is life unknown. So what appears as something is taken for something, and the reality which experiences no understanding that is not there anymore. So any moment of experiencing anything, it's I, even not in word, but it's there. Isn't true? That's why learning to understand the reality which appears from moment to moment does not appear as it is at all. And no understanding of the truth, even that is a reality, because it experiences the object without any understanding. Like now, there is seeing, no understanding of seeing, no one. The reality which does not or cannot understand seeing is real, because it's now. It does not understand the truth of seeing. It's no one. It's only moment of that which arises and sees. That's all. That's all. Only seeing. That's why now there are many, many different moments, like chitta before seeing, chitta after seeing, through mind and sense, alternately, unknown all the time. That's why just hearing the truth, considering it, whether it's right or wrong, that's all. Even considering is not anyone. What is it? It's a reality. It does not see, but it experiences the same object, which arises and falls with so many processes now to form up the different shape and form with the idea of something. See, this is life. Analyze it into just a reality at a time, because life is different this life. Feeling pleasant and unpleasant is not the same at all. That's why so many different things in life just arise and fall through unknowingly. That's why just there is a reality which begin to consider what is heard, whether it's true or not. Even that is not anyone at all. That's why the world appears only by nimitta, not as it is, until there is the beginning of understanding. No one at all. There are only different realities from moment to moment that can be known, not by oneself, because not enough conditions to understand the truth of what is there by oneself, but from hearing the words of truth, consider it's there, wrongly or rightly, deeper or very rough, and so on, or are conditioned realities. This is the right understanding of the truth. Is it true? Only that, true or not. And even the truth of that which appears now can be known or not. All depends on conditions. Without hearing, considering about what is there as is truth, there can never be the understanding of the truth of what is there now. Not more, no more, only just in split seconds. That's why the truth of reality is not easy to just try to do something in order to gain such understanding. But it develops from hearing, considering of what is there in life. Even it's so different, but it can be known only at moment when it's there. So now, only that which appears that we are talking about can be object of understanding of the truth. There is seeing, and there is that which is seen. And the seeing is no one, because it is a reality which is conditioned just to see, not to hear, not to think. So as soon as it has arising, performing its function, is gone. Where is it now? The seeing just a moment ago. Who knows? But the sign of seeing is there to be known. But to understand that it's not just one moment of seeing, not just one object which is seen, because they appear as flowers, bed, curtain, and so on. It seems like in a moment, experience it at once as one opens up one's eye. But in truth, just think about the truth and that which is not true. Ignorance cannot understand what there is now, the words about it, to consider how can there be a rose without experiencing just one dot, different colors, white rose, yellow rose, and what about the shape of the petal, of the leaf, and of the whatever is there, the vase, and so on. So many, many things in life are hidden because no considering, no conditions enough to think about it in a day. If it's not heard at all, even it's heard, after hearing, is there any time considering, thinking about what is heard? Because at any moment there must be the reality, a reality there to be known. We think that we see the same thing in a room yesterday, this morning, and now. But in truth, not the same seeing, not the same that which is seen. It's gone, unknown, until right understanding digs up the truth of it to show up as it is, little by little, to understand the whole truth of it, the absolute truth of what is standing. So just the understanding, no one, and attachment, desire, hoping, wanting, clinging to understand it is another reality, but not seeing, but not considering. See, and this is the world full of the conditioned realities and conditions for whatever arises now. So many, many conditions accumulated to just have such thinking, the words about it right now and anytime. Is that true? That's all. No one there. But there is right understanding of the truth, little by little. Different from moment when there's no understanding of what is there as it is right now at all. And when it's so true, can it be realized according to the truth?
So, Achan, there has to, pardon me, there has to be a lot of confidence in what we hear of Buddha's teachings, because the realities that you speak of, you know, speaking of the room, yes, it looks exactly like it did yesterday, but, you know, in reality, no, it's very, very different. So there has to be that confidence that those words of the Buddha are true and correct.
And when it's so true, it's the confidence of the truth of it. And only this now understanding from the very beginning is not enough. It's just the beginning to realize the truth, because now no understanding of the truth at all. But when there is the understanding of the truth, this is the way it is. This is what we call it life. This is what is going on now from this moment on and on. The confidence of Panya, right understanding, develops on and on and on and on. That's why it has the word parami. Otherwise, without parami, how can there be virya and adidana and satya for those who have studied the word before? The word parami, conditions or factors of enlightenment. And the moment of enlightened the truth by way of nimitta, as it is now naturally, cannot arise without the beginning of understanding the truth, little by little. What is now appearing does not change at all, but right understanding of what is there begins to develop. Not enough, because there are moments when there's no thought about it and take it for something as usual until it's so firm. And that's why without Panya develops on to be parami, the mental factors, the factor of enlightenment, it's impossible to understand the truth that now there's no understanding of the reality which experiences what is there at all. We just learn to know that it is real because now it sees, but it's conditioned to arise without the eye base of the eye sense that cannot be seen. And even there is the eye sense or eye base, when nothing impinges on it, they cannot be seen. Each moment is so true and so deep, and it's just arises and falls away in split seconds until it's known, understood, little by little, that this moment is not last at all. Does not last at all. It's not lasting. It's gone before we can think of anything. Because actually, no I, only different realities which arises to experiences in its manner or by its nature and its characteristic, because attachment is different from detachment. It's not like the moment of getting angry. It's not the moment of feeling unpleasant. See, everything in life can be known because it's there. But when there is no attention to the way it is, how can it be known? So now is the beginning to understand what is there, as we have studied from the book about it. Seeing arises, otherwise there's no seeing, and there's seeing, so there must be conditions for its arising. And seeing is not there all the time. Hearing, thinking are in between. So seeing is so very, very rapidly arising and falling away, succeeded by at the moment unknown until Buddha taught about the truth of each split seconds of a second. Is that the reality, the citta, the experiencing, which does not see before seeing? It can be known because it's there now.
So I'm understanding your words a little more by, and I've heard them for many years, begin again, begin again. And I don't think I considered it very much before. Yes, begin again, but that's what it is, isn't it? It always is a beginning. Maybe there is some right understanding developing, but the objects are falling away all of the time. So it is begin again if this to be understanding of the presently arising object or nimitta of that object, sign of that object.
It's so true, so real in life, but no right understanding at all when there's no hearing about its truth. But when that is the word of truth, of its truth, can there be moment of developing understanding to know what's right and what's wrong? There's no I, because seeing is seeing. That which is seen is only that which is seen. So how come the moment of seeing, no one there at all? The moment of hearing again, no one at all. Only hearing arises and here, and sound is heard. See? So what appears at any time in any world are only through 6 doorways, while the other realities are the unknown, because they do not appear like the citta before seeing and the citta after seeing, and the bhavanga in between for those who understand what bhavanga is. Who knows? But the truth is so true by way of explaining each moment as it is. One moment is so very short. After it has fallen away, never to arise again. But it conditions at the moment instantly. Is the truth just that? No one beginning to realize the truth. Dhammas, what is it? Or Dhamma, anatta. All the teachings about the truth of Dhammas and anatta, no one, no thing. To be considered as one live, not die yet. Can there be moment of hearing, considering, understanding what is there in life?
If we don't hear the words of the Buddha, then we would never know what realities are.
That's why we understand how much respect to the truth that has been enlightened by the enlightened one, which share his understanding to those to have one's own understanding. Otherwise, it's useless if there cannot be moment of understanding what is there now. What's the use of hearing? What is the profit of the hearing, considering? Just heard. But it's so true because it appears now that it can be known as it is. It depends on whether there is interest to understand it or no interest at all in understanding the truth of what is there. That is also a reality accumulated, conditioned by each moment, experiencing. Otherwise, what is the teaching of the Buddha? Many people pay respect to him without any understanding of his right understanding, his great understanding, great purity, and great compassion. If there is no understanding in this life, what about next life? The same, no understanding keeps on arising and falling away with ideas about it. And it's only thinking, because without thinking, can there be any idea? So, idea is only the object of thinking.
However, there has to be thinking of what we heard, of what has been heard, thinking and contemplating.
Mhm. Because thinking
Yes.
is a reality. It's real.
Yes.
Who
yes.
can make it arise? Or just think about this, not about that, all by conditions. Each one has different thought about everything, even right now, by conditions.
Yes,
And
Ajahn, all by
each moment,
condition.
and each moment of thinking is just for a moment. Life just exists in a moment. That's why it's always begin again and again, no matter with ignorance or with understanding. There's always the beginning of life from moment to moment. The thinking a moment ago is completely gone. The ignorance a moment ago is gone. The understanding a moment has gone again, gone already. So it always has to be the beginning again and again. The understanding of last week is history. So it always has to be this moment. And with the room, as you say, it seems the room is the same as yesterday, but it seems, but actually it's different. But actually, in truth, there is no room, just as there's no person, no thing. It's just the thinking now, thinking about the story of the room, which is similar to the thinking about the story of the room yesterday. But actually, the thinking now is different, even though it's clings to the same, a similar idea again and again and again because of memory. But actually, no room is seen, no room is touched. It's just what is imagined. And this is what is meant by living in the world of nimitta, living in the world of stories and dreams and fantasies, ideas of people and things and rooms. But actually, there's just moments of seeing and hearing and thinking, no room to be found.
Good reminder, Sarah, because sometimes I think I'm sick of being in this room. So no
Actually,
room, yes.
really, it's just sick of thinking about the room, it's sick of the thinking, dosa arising with the thinking.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, thank you.
And you mentioned either last week or the week before when Ajahn was talking about the joy with understanding, and you made a comment about, oh, well, sometimes it seems there's no joy. And I think we were going to discuss it a little more. And I thought of you when I wrote a quote about someone with a lot of virtue. And of course, the greatest virtue is understanding. For when there is a lot of virtue and understanding, one doesn't have to think, oh, let's hope there's no regret arising, because when there is the virtue and understanding, no conditions for the regret because of that understanding. And for one with no regret, there is joy. So I was just reflecting on your comment that when there's understanding, it doesn't seem so joyful to you. Did you have anything further on that to mention?
Nothing that's coming to mind, but you know, maybe it's just the accumulations that there's little joy. I don't know. I don't quite remember the actual conversation, but I do remember us discussing about regretting things, and I think Jonathan made the mention that, am I looking a bit dark? I've got the blind down because it's very, very hot here. One moment. We're in the middle of a heat wave and it's unbearably hot here. Where was it? Oh, yes, regretting. And I think somebody made the comment that, you know, maybe regret is more obvious as you get older. And certain things I've done even in the last 6 years, just regretting, but it's a really, okay, that's real when it arises and it's there, but it's really, and maybe this is where a bit of joy comes in. It's really helpful to have Buddha's words and thinking that that regret, that is, it's here and now and it's gone. And what is the object of regret is completely gone. And that was a concept anyway. So yes, in some moments when that sort of occurrence arises, knowing that this is pointless or that is just a reality, there is some joy in thinking like that. So does that make sense?
And the regret is, it's just a Dharma, conditions for it to rise, and it's there, and there can be understanding at that moment. And it's usually taken for my regret, but it's just a Dharma that falls away instantly. So the moments of understanding what appears, no matter it's seeing, no matter it's regret, what appears at that moment, there is a letting go of the burden of clinging to it as something or as mine. So moments of understanding, it is joyful just to let go for that moment. And then of course there can be more clinging, more regret, but just at those moments of understanding, it's light, it's calm, it's light, joyful for that moment.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing that up, because thank you. I don't think I've got anything more at the moment. Oh, look, if nobody else has got anything, I do have one other thing that came out of, I think it was yesterday afternoon's discussion with the Vietnamese people. And Sarah, you said something like, I think there was discussion on Rupa, and you said, if the body is considered Rupa, what Rupa is it? No, that was the Chinese discussion. Sorry, I've got a little note after me. I think it might have been, one of the Taiwanese. So if the body is considered Rupa, and your question was, well, what Rupa is it? And I thought that was really good, because to my mind, you've broken up the body by just saying, well, what Rupa do you think the body is? Yeah, it was good.
Because we think now we can see an arm or a leg or a body, but what Rupa is seen now that we take for the arm or the leg, or we think that we can touch an arm or a leg or a stomach, but what is the Rupa that is touched that we call the arm or the leg or the stomach? So all the time we live in the world of dreams and fantasies about things and bodies and people, but what is it at this very moment that appears like regret? Is it yours? Is it mine? Who does it belong to? Or is it just regret that appears at the moment when hardness appears, when hardness is touched? Is it my arm or my leg or the cup? Or is it just hardness that appears? So I think the point of the discussion was that it's only by understanding what appears right now, what life is at this very moment, that there can be the right considering about how it is a dream world or a world of ideas, when there is the taking for the arm, the leg, the body, the person for being real, but without the understanding of that it's now, there's no way to let go of the idea of something there. And you mentioned about, well, maybe accumulations for not so much joy and so on. I mean, everyone has different accumulations, but I appreciate the accumulations to listen so much and for so much interest in the Dharma, so that you even listen to the Chinese and Vietnamese discussions. So I appreciate that very much. And that can be a real source of joy to appreciate the fact that of appreciating the value in listening and understanding so much.
Thank you. Well, all of the discussions over the weekend, it's just wonderful. It's just almost, and sometimes I have talks going in between times. So it's just a really packed weekend of Dhamma discussion. So yeah, thank you to everyone who participates. It's wonderful.
And on the body, just to be told there's no body doesn't actually help anyone, because the clinging to the idea of something there, my body, is so strongly rooted. So that's why we have to always come back to what is now, what is actually appearing now, what is seen now, what is heard now, what is touched now, and what is thought about or imagined, like the room. What is it? What is it that is taken for the room? What is it that's taken for the body? So I think it's so useful to consider these points, these questions again and again.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Zita.
Give somebody else a go.
I have something about thinking. It certainly seems that thinking is continuous, and but usually, not always, but usually it flows along pretty reasonably and is linked and everything else. This is all as a result of ignorance of now, of what is truly happening. But it's certainly something I find difficult to understand and grasp. I know it's if there were no sense impressions, there would be no thinking. But I guess I'm thinking of concepts, and I'm not thinking about trees and tables and things like that. I'm thinking about, well, I guess it's all abstract, isn't it? But in conventional language, I guess I'm thinking of more abstract concepts. Democracy is always the one I pull out. But you know, that has to be rooted somewhere in sense impressions. Can John or Sarah or Jonathan help me here?
Can we rather say it's rooted in memory?
Yes.
Memory of previous sense impressions and thinking?
Yes. But I guess my question then would be, how did we get to it in the first place?
Well, is that a fruitful question to consider?
Maybe not.
Because
But
that's just the way
origin,
it is, isn't it? We want to go back to the year dot or the eon dot, as it were.
No, we don't want to go there. I think.
Even in this lifetime, if there's no hearing of various sounds which are thought about by way of nimitta, if there were no ideas about the sounds and the meaning and what has been heard, could there be any ideas about democracy? Or if nothing is read, if no visible objects are seen when reading the newspaper, could there be any memory of what those visible objects are? No idea of, could there be any, could there not be any idea of the shapes, the forms of what was seen, and the ideas about this politics or that politics or this country or that country? So it all comes back to what has been seen and what has been heard and what has been remembered repeatedly again and again, like the way a child learns to read from a few basics, more and more and more. And it's the same, the thinking accumulates because of the memory of the different sounds, the different visible objects, the different shapes, forms, ideas that have been gathered together. So there's more and more thinking about the meaning of democracy, the meaning of this country or this idea.
Good
But
help.
without
Yeah.
anything having been seen or heard, it would be
Right.
impossible.
Yes, I think we need to get back to childhood and any childhood, but let's look at it in this life. That helps, Sarah, that explanation.
Layers and layers of thinking about the shapes and forms of what has been seen and heard
Yeah, over many lives.
over
for
and
sure.
over again. And it's just the same with studying of Dhamma without sounds having been heard, visible objects seen, and memory about those sounds and visible objects. There couldn't be any ideas about the Dhamma. There couldn't be any memory of what is meant by visible object or sound. So it's the memory on account of
Yes.
the sense objects that have been experienced that conditions the thinking about different meanings, different terms, different concepts.
Thank you.
And Dan, I was just thinking too on that question.
I hear you.
Yeah, whether that be democracy or any concept, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha for that matter.
Yes, yes.
We'll flesh out those concepts in ways which have been alluded to by previous speakers, but also by our accumulations. We're going to continually do that, and that's why it's important also to consider carefully what we hear. And there is a kind of, it seems to me, a bit of an existential trap. You get into this idea of thinking about, well, Dhamma or meditation or whatever concept that you think about, and you'll flesh them out very readily in ways that suit your own accumulations. And this is where I think have to be, and this is where I think we have to be quite honest, or as Ajahn would say, being truthful to the truth. And that's not an easy thing. We can say that, and many people will understand that, perhaps not. Perhaps I'll flesh that out, that concept or those set of concepts out in your own particular ways. So it's not always easy to, that's a really good question to ask. How do we do that? How do we flesh out these different concepts? How do we understand them? And has been spoken to before about there is the reality appearing now. That is a kind of touchstone, if you like, of reality, rather than building upon rather obscure concepts like democracy, because it is a rather obscure concept. You can speak to 1,000 people and they'll give you 1,000 different answers on that one.
Exactly.
What does it really mean? Especially in your country today, I follow a little bit what goes on there, but there's some pretty contentious. There's some pretty contentious subjects being spoken about. And yeah, that's right. So it's always important to, I guess, remember the Dhamma as we understand it, as far as we can, that it refers to present reality. Beyond that, some of these concepts are not easy to, they're not reality. They're samuti satya. They're not paramatta satya. And we get very easily seduced by samuti satya, which are important, and we need them. We need concepts to enable us to understand deeper realities. But there is a kind of a trap that can easily ensue when those ultimate realities are really not appreciated, or say are not understood, or not even appreciated. Because for me, it wasn't really until I heard Kun Sujin many years ago, and she talked about the difference between samuti satya and paramatta satya. That is something I'd never really heard about or even considered before. And if we can consider those different aspects of truth more carefully, I believe we will be getting to a better understanding of what is the ultimate truth. But I think that takes, a tremendous amount of patience and commitment to truth in the highest sense. And we don't just come by that because you decide to do that. That doesn't happen. You don't say, oh, well, I'm going to ditch all my previous misunderstandings in favor of something that's worthwhile, because we're trapped by our own accumulations in a sense. So it's a difficult area, and it requires, as Ajahn would say, ongoing commitment to truth and honesty, but ultimately to what appears at the present moment. But it's easier said than done. I can certainly say that.
And if I could just add a suggestion that may be helpful, because I don't think it's such a big issue. One could think of a concept that one has come to know recently, like, for example, climate change or zero emission. Now, what's the origin of that? Well, it's just part of a normal thinking and daily life experiences. One, if you talk about sensed or objects, well, there may not have been any particular sensed or object experience on which it's based. You may not have witnessed it where you are, for example, but you still know what it means or have an idea of the concept. And it's just, these concepts are just a shorthand for a number of different things, other concepts. So I don't think it's anything to puzzle over to any great degree. But
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
we're learning new concepts all the time.
Yes.
Language
Yes,
is a concept too.
Yes, as is initial looking at and reading about the Dhamma. It's all until you realize, until you recognize that it's what's in the book is not the answer, is not finding out about Buddhism or the truth.
Right.
It's something else. When I think it was, I can't remember if it was Sarah or Sundara mentioned, where it I think it becomes quite clear is when you think about interest in the Dhamma. And I have no difficulty at all thinking that comes from past accumulations. That would come from there, and various other accumulations for kinds of, for kindness or greed or whatever. Yeah.
Well, some of those things
They're not
also
concepts.
refer to realities, don't they? Like
Yes, they
kindness
do.
or greed.
Yes, for sure.
They are labels for particular realities or combinations of realities, but other concepts are not really, cannot be defined in that way.
No.
And like Jan said when we were talking about
You're breaking up a bit, Sarah.
Dharma earlier, and it's listening to. Can you hear me?
No.
Okay, I think my connections are unstable, so I'll just keep it short. But
We're hearing you fine
when
right
we're
now.
talking about,
You're hearing her, but she's not actually talking right now. That's what she said earlier, and it's just sort of gradually coming through. So there's a
Echo.
problem with her connection. I think it's not up to speed at the moment.
Now we're not hearing you, Jonathan.
I think you're still able to hear me, right?
Just now.
Yes.
Yes. Right now.
Sarah's having to do a restart, I think.
Okay.
is that right now? Okay, mentioned early interest hearing. Okay, I'll leave it.
Goes the echo again.
Jonathan, I
Yes,
think it was,
Azita.
I think it was in maybe in yesterday afternoon's discussion, and you made, I wrote it down, you made this comment about applying one's own values onto someone else. And I could think of any number of people, including myself, that do that. And I think that's probably something that we all do to a degree, that which is, you know, you could then go on, well, my values are different to my next door neighbour, and then the country's values are different to another country, and would, you know, maybe the cause of wars and things. But I thought it was a really good comment because, well, it just shows that, yes, that's, we think how our ideas, you know, back to that democratic discussion, our ideas are the right ideas, and somebody else's are wrong. And yes, I think it's a good one to keep thinking about, or even we could talk about it now. But I think it's really good.
Thanks, Azita. I think I made that comment in the context of a discussion about mana, conceit.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. Because we tend to be judgmental of other people, and being judgmental means applying our values to their conduct or behavior or way of thinking, or preferences. And there's a tendency to judge others, and that is an aspect, as I understand it, of mana, conceit. Maybe Ajahn can speak something to this, because at that moment one is waving one's own banner, the commentaries say,
yes,
in the sense of giving prominence to one's own ideals or values, and yeah, the thinking is led by that. And as you say, it's quite common.
yes.
I think conceit is something that's very common in one's habitual thinking. And that's why it's one of the three things mentioned by the Buddha: thinking with lobha, thinking with conceit, thinking with wrong view, or citta, with those three mental factors are mentioned throughout the suttas, and by different names. One is manyana or manyati, and the vipalasas are referenced by those three kinds of thinking. And then this is me, this I am, this is myself, I'm not sure if I said that correctly, is also a reference to those three different kinds of consciousness.
Yes.
So,
and it's interesting to, it's always struck me as how embedded mana is, because mana is not eradicated until there's arahatship, until the moment of
not
arahat.
finally eradicated, right?
Not finally eradicated till then. So it's deeply enrooted, as Ajahn would say. Yeah, very deeply. Yeah, thank you.
But Azita, remember that at the root, the roots are a attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And I think it's ignorance and attachment which is the real influence.
Yes, you can. I think so, because like the second noble truth is attachment, isn't it? So
well, I understand that as to be another aspect of attachment, but it's attachment, mana, why we compare, because it feels good to compare. and why it feels good.
Not always. we can be embarrassed, or we can.
Right. It is still mana. Mana is with loba, and it's like loba. Everything is loba. When I just heard Azita talk about we judge and we compare. I think people like to judge. It's like we like to judge. It's enjoyable. We like to judge, even if it's saying that we are not better off, like the other one is better than us, and that kind of compare. It's just a habit of comparing, and we like it. We enjoy it.
And we don't appreciate the mana that's there and the loba that's there. And it's what I was going to say before, it's like talking about or thinking about democracy. It's because the loba, the interest with loba has been accumulated on and on. So one keeps thinking about that particular story. Some people think a lot about food. It depends on the interest, what there is thinking about on account of what has been seen and heard. And this is what Ajahn was mentioning about when hearing about the Dhamma. It depends on the interest, whether one would like to hear and consider further or not, or whether one just wants to drop the story and study something different or follow a practice or find another way. So it depends on the wholesome or unwholesome interest. But when we're talking about the democracy or comparing with others, it is the thinking with loba that has been accumulated to that story on and on.
Back to what Sukin just said, when there's, and I might be mixing this mana up with the degree of dosa, but if you consider, oh, they've done that, I'm not able to do that, blah, 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 and then there's unpleasant feelings. So obviously the mana has gone, because if mana only ever arises with loba mula jitta, doesn't it? Mana doesn't arise on its own. It arises with a loba mula jitta without wrong view. And so I guess the feeling cannot be unpleasant, but it's probably quite indifferent. But when there's a bit of unpleasant feeling towards feeling inferior to someone, that's got to be a degree of dosa.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So the dosa that follows on account of the loba, but the lobas with pleasant feeling, usually maybe of neutral feeling, but usually, as Sukin said, it's with enjoyment, with pleasant feeling at those times. So one enjoys the story, one enjoys the comparing, but afterwards, like you say, there may be dosa, different chittas.
Yes, yeah. So thank you for that, Sukin. Good reminder.
Does Arupa Brahma have mana?
Must do, Ajahn.
No one there to be seen, to be heard, to be thought about?
Arupa jhana, Arupa Brahma, you said, Ajahn, Arupa.
Yeah.
Well, there's no rupa to be proud of or anything, but there's still mana, because that there's still mana in that stream of jittas, because it's not been eradicated. Would that be right?
When we think about clinging to wrong understanding, titi, and clinging to just being attached to what is there, and clinging to oneself to have mana, is it possible? No wrong understanding, but there must be clinging. But at the moment when it's there, whether it is clinging with attachment or clinging with attachment and mana,
Mhm.
because mana has to arise with attachment.
Yes.
With attachment, there cannot be mana. But the moment there, whether it's cling, not with mana, but just to be attached to what we take for me, my body, my hand, and so on, without wrong understanding. But there is object of clinging and something there. But when we have no rupa at all, no one there at all, is there still mana? Because there is still clinging. And that clinging condition mana too. At the moment when it's there. Who am I?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
what can be known? But it is gross as comparing oneself to the other. But when there's no one at all, but there is still attachment. And that attachment brings about conceit of the way one is, bhava.
This is the tendency. This
How's
is
that?
mine. Mama is mine. Namkara, making me, making mine.
So mana is very subtle too, as long as attachment is so very subtle. When it's still there, how can it be attached to oneself with mana, or sometimes without mana? Is it in Tipitaka? Is it what Buddha taught about what can eradicate mana? As long as there is attachment, there can be condition for mana. To cling to oneself with mana, not with wrong view.
And I think, Tanajan, that's why I noticed Jonathan alluded to this a moment ago when it talks about ahamkara, mamamkara, and manusya. Sorry, manasya. Excuse me, manusya. So referring to the tendency to the different types of lobha mula citta, you know, the one which involves ditthi, the one that involves clinging strongly onto this belongs to me, mamamkara, and manusya, this is the flag waving, this is the tendency to compare, which can arise with lobha mula citta.
So is the mana now?
Well, I'm not exactly sure, John. Probably some of it's in there at some level, because I think it can be very subtle. Manasya. It can be very subtle, and but I think, as has been spoken to today, when there is dosa, we know there's not mana. That's the present feeling. But I think we can probably say that it can arise with a neutral feeling also. So that can be very subtle.
It's not always there. So how can it be known? Because the reality is not known yet. Like seeing now, attachment now, is not the object of understanding of its truth. There's no one there at all. That's why even there is no wrong understanding of that which is now appearing. It has been eradicated, absolutely wrong understanding, but there is an attachment. As long as there is attachment, it can condition man of oneself, not with wrong understanding, but it's there still.
So what you seem to be saying there, Tanajan, is that there is easily the conditions for mana to rise when there is lopamura chitta in it. It seems that it can rise, well, I imagine a lot of the time unknowingly, but you're also, what I noticed you said, that it's important to come back to the reality that appears, because they are, perhaps we can say, more apparent and more understandable, certainly in the beginning. And perhaps mana is, unless it's very strong, and perhaps even then for some people it's not noticed, as consider it something, I don't know, normal or whatever. So you're always coming back to the present reality, Tanajan, that can begin to know what appears, whether it's hardness or visual object or sound. They're the important realities, or we can't, and perhaps I want to qualify that when I say they're the important realities, are the realities that perhaps in the beginning are more easily known.
Without understanding each word of the Buddha about now to be known, it's impossible to understand the truth. For example, in a day, so many moments of lopa, who knows, even right now, being attached to what is seen, 3 moments after seeing, see, who knows? And mana does not arise as often as craving or lopa. So how can it be known? More subtle. So it can be known when there's more understanding of lopa too, whether it's lopa or whether it's mana then. So many things now appear unknown. There is attachment to that which is seen unknown. There is attachment to the sound which is heard unknown. That's why we learn to understand what is there little by little. So when it's there, there can be a moment of attending to that characteristic with understanding. And there can be the moment of understanding the difference between intellectual understanding and the patipati, different level. Without understanding of this moment, how can it understand what is there? With direct awareness, to understand directly of that reality as no one in truth. If we know a lot of words in Tipika and do not understand anything now, can that be the study of Dhamma? It's study of the word only.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Tanajan, because you've made the distinction between the studying of the word and the study and the understanding of Dhamma. Is where you can understand the completely different realities, and I think it's so easy to be confused between the study of Dhamma and the study of the word. Perhaps if somebody was asking you, Tanajan, about how do you differentiate those two? The study of the Dhamma and the study of the word.
Okay. Is there seeing right now? Is that moment of studying Dhamma?
We can say that, Tanajan.
It's moment of studying the real Dhamma, because seeing is a Dhamma, and that which is seen is a Dhamma. So at moment of talking about what is there, is it not study? Moment of study, the truth of that. It's time to have the understanding. And that is still intellectually, because it's not the understanding enough to condition moment of understanding the difference between direct awareness and moment of seeing, and just thinking about it to understand whether what is there in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. So if someone's to ask, how do you think, Tanajan, that this confusion persists amongst people when they perhaps argue over different concepts about Dhamma?
Okay, it's moment of study what confused is. a reality. If that person doesn't have the understanding that even that is not self, it's just a reality, how can there be more understanding of the truth? Not just the word from the book, in the book, but now it's there to be known that this moment of studying Dhamma, even not directly yet, but just about as Buddha asked anyone who came to see him, is the seeing permanent? And so on. Just ask about what is there for the person to understand, not the word, but the truth, that it's a reality. It's real. It's Dhamma, not just the word Dhamma, but seeing now. It's not anything. It's just seeing. And this is moment of studying Dhamma.
So we can probably say, Tanajan, when we take ideas or concepts or notions or whatever word you like to use, when we take the word, say, confusion, and that's only understood conventionally, which it is easy enough to do. We understand that word conventionally, confusion, not sure, doubtful, or being not clear. When that is seen as something that belongs to you, that is part of the problem.
Yes. Are they all Dhammas?
Well,
now as no matter it's confusion.
True. They're all Dhammas, ultimately, but I think it's so easy to confuse them with a reality that's not Dhamma. And that seems to me where a lot of confusion arises.
So if one say sometimes or something is Dhamma and something is not Dhamma, is that true?
No, of course not. But there's a subtlety and difference there that I think confuses people. Still, when you ask me that question, it seems apparent that all is Dhamma. That's just the way it is. But I think it's easy to be misled by concepts.
That's why the question just bring about the understanding of the truth. No matter in what situation, what kind of Dhamma, what characteristic, what level, to be firm confidence that it's not self from the very beginning, to be pariyatti, see. Not just one word, but about whatever is there as no wonder at all. Otherwise, there cannot be consistent for patipatti. And สวัสดีค่ะ